Well, it was very difficult for my mother. She had 5 children. My father was working underground all during the war, and so we didn't see him very often. I was, I was born in 1935, so I was like 5 or 6 years old, and I can remember mother not knowing what she was going to feed us because it was very difficult to get food, and we lived in an area outside of Oxford in Wiltshire, and everything was rationed, and it was very difficult. You couldn't grow anything in the soil. It was very poor soil for growing things. So the underground was where they were building all the aircraft underground because they didn't want the Germans to see them. And they had 3 different factories there. Vickers Armstrong was the big one, I think. But anyway, we didn't see him very often. My dad, yes, worked underground all during the war. And all the factories were put underground. It was something to do with aircraft, and they had to have certain places that they put them, and that was what he had to do, was tell them where to put everything, which planes were going where, and which ones were being shipped out. And it was dangerous because we had air bases around us, and of course the Germans would come over and bomb them, and we could hear them come. We could hear the planes coming, and we could hear the bombs. And there were those bombs that used to scream when they went down, and then they'd stop right before they hit the ground. I don't remember the name of those bombs, though. My mom, yes, she was an amazing woman, and she took care of us all during the war, and she managed to feed us and keep us alive somehow. But we were lucky that we lived on the Oxford Road, and the American troops would come through, and they'd be in their big trucks, and someone in the neighborhood, some child in the neighborhood would yell, "The Yanks are coming." And we would all run up to the main road, and the trucks were coming through, and we'd stand on the side of the road and say, "Got any gum, chum?" The American troops threw out all the food they had, candy, everything they bring from the base, and throw it out. And that was where I saw my first banana and took it back to Mother, and she told me what it was, and made sandwiches for 5 children out of 1 banana, yes. But anyway, when you're that young, you don't realize the danger. I mean, I was never really frightened. The only thing that frightened me were searchlights. And of course our bases had searchlights going all the time. And they'd spot a German plane, and then they'd fire, and you could hear it. And that was the only time I was frightened, was the searchlights. My father had an air raid shelter built under the stairs at the house. And Mother would stand at the bottom of the stairs and say, "Shelter time!" And we'd all come running down the stairs and get in the shelter. So that was the only thing I really remember about that. But you could hear the bombs. Oh, my grandmother would send 2 rabbits every week, and they would come. She'd have the man on her property kill the rabbits, and they would come with brown paper wrapped around them, and the postman would bring them to the door and say, "Mrs. Martin, here are your rabbits." And Mother would take them in and clean them and cook them for us. And they came every week. Grandmother sent them every week. We were very lucky to get them. That was our main protein. My dad came home one weekend and he said, "We're moving, Margie," to my mother. And she said, "To where?" He said, "We're going to Wiltshire." And she said, "I don't think so." And he said, "Yes, we're going. The bombing's getting too bad." And so he had trucks come and load us up and take us 70 miles west of London to Wiltshire. And Mother was furious. But anyway, it was, they did what they had to do, we were lucky to get out. I was in training with Eastern at Miami Springs Villas, and Bob was at Homestead Air Force Base, and the guys used to come from the base when the new group came in to go through school. They'd come through to check the girls out, and I happened to be one of the girls trying to cross, because I went to a club that night with one of the other girls, and we weren't supposed to go, and we had a curfew, and they had a guard that would parade up and down, and if he caught you, you were through. So we were trying to run across the road, and Bob and his roommate came, hit the brakes, and said, "What are you girls doing?" We got down beside the car and said, "We're trying to get to our room, but we've got to go out through that, we've got to go up that outside staircase to get to the room." And they said, "Well, if you'll go on a weenie roast with us tomorrow, we'll help you." In other words, they wouldn't let the police see us. And the girl that was my roommate was from New York, and she said, "We can't do that, we don't know them." And I said, "Dottie, it doesn't matter. It's broad daylight, it's going to be noon, and we can leave." She said, "I don't believe you're doing this." Well, the next day they showed up at 12 o'clock, and we went to the beach. I, being from England, didn't know what a weenie roast was. I thought it sounded very suspicious. But anyway, we did go, and we had a good time. And we dated from then on. And we've had a great life. And he's a great guy. He's worked hard, and he's been very successful. And I'm very proud of him. You know, we have 4 children. We had 4. We lost one. And but we still have 3, and we have 6 wonderful grandchildren, and we get to see them a lot. And when they come, they bring all their dogs, and when the dogs come, there are 17 of them in here. Crazy. People think we're absolutely demented, which I'm sure we are.